Welcome to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, from our studios here in London. Over the next half an hour, we'll be looking beyond the business headlines by giving you in-depth perspective on the stories that are affecting all of us. Coming up on today's show, this week the world has marked International Women's Day. The holiday has been commemorated for over a century and has been a major part of the women's rights movement and helped to create conversations about gender equity and gender equality. Earlier in the week, Channel's Business Global was invited to speak with the British Minister of State for Development in Africa, Andrew Mitchell MP, as his government pledges to place tackling gender inequality at the heart of its international work. We'll also be having a female-led discussion here in the studio about what it's really like to be a woman in the boardroom in 2023 with Jessica Hope, the founder and CEO of the African PR firm Wimbart. But first, let's start the show with a story that continues to make headlines here in the UK and across the world. The British government has unveiled a new plan to stop migrants entering the country on small boats after more than 45,000 crossed the Channel just last year. Under the plans, arrivals will be detained within the first 28 days without bail or judicial review, and the vast majority of migrants would be unable to make claims to stop their deportation. They will also be banned from claiming UK settlement, citizenship or re-entering the country indefinitely. The bill has come under severe criticism from opposition MPs and refugee charities.
Those illegally crossing the Channel are not directly fleeing a war-torn country, or persecution, or an imminent threat to life. They have travelled through safe European countries. They are paying people smugglers huge sums to make this dangerous and sometimes tragic journey. People must know that if they come here illegally, it will result in their detention and swift removal. Once this happens, and they know it will happen, they will not come and the boats will stop.
Mr. Speaker, he stood there last year saying exactly the same thing. We said it wouldn't work. They passed the law. The numbers went up. Absolutely deluded. He can't say where they'll return people because they spent 140 million on Rwanda and it doesn't work. They can't say how they'll return people because this bill doesn't come with a single new return agreement. And they can't say when they'll fix the mess because it's more talk, more gimmicks, more promises to be broken.
Well, earlier I was joined in the studio by our business correspondent Simon Pusey for his assessment of the government's controversial new immigration plans. Simon, I wanted to discuss WhatsApp Gate, which has been pretty scandalous, and former Health Secretary Matt Hancock is at the centre of that. We won't, because of course this week there was an announcement of a new piece of legislation which has been dubbed Small Boats, or Stop the Small Boats, which is a pretty inflammatory language by the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. Lots of people are concerned. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, well, I think Stop the Boats is this slogan, and it's something that the Conservative government have been doing for a while, especially under Rishi Sunak, which is to put this message in people's heads, 3 short words, stop the boats. It's also, interestingly, a slogan that was used by Australia.
Yes.
And Australia is something that they often pick up on as an example of how to tackle this problem, because Australia doesn't have as many illegal crossings as they used to. And they're saying that part of the reason for that is that once they could send people away, once they had the powers to send people away, less people ended up coming, and they used the same slogan. And Rishi Sunak has an advisor who is Australian, who he's been working with on this.
And who used to work with the former
of course, yeah.
Australian Prime Minister.
Yeah, Tony Abbott. So it's a big Tory pledge, and it has been for a while. I think the Conservatives think it's a vote winner. They want to come across as being the anti-illegal immigration people compared to Labour, who are a little bit more compassionate, and I think that quite a few people will vote in terms of immigration, and they did at the last election, which won Boris a huge majority. Just to clarify, the law means that anyone who's found to have entered the country illegally will not only be removed from the UK after 28 days, but they'll also be blocked from ever returning again or claiming British citizenship in the future, which is pretty extreme. The issue also isn't a simple issue. I think the Conservatives, with that slogan, Stop the Boats, want it to come across as being, we're having too many illegal immigrants coming in. This is causing great problems for our country, a big strain on everything that we have, like the NHS and stuff. And this is an issue, and we're sorting it out. But it's not that simple at all. The numbers of illegal migration have gone up considerably. It's 45,700 migrants crossed the Channel last year. That's just compared to a few hundred back in 2018. So it is clearly a problem. But that's not necessarily that doesn't reflect the fact that more people are coming here, and there are other reasons for it. So I think one of the main reasons which the Conservative government don't really want to talk about is the fact that processing the people who want to claim asylum is taking forever, and they do not have enough people to sort it out.
So for one case a week.
Yeah. So for example, only 4% of people who arrived in the UK in small boats last year have had a decision about their application now in 2023. So that's in 2021 to 2023, 2 and a bit years, and they've had only 4% of people. So that's the reason that people are coming across in small boats, is that there isn't really. So one of the criticisms is, you need to process people faster. Give them easier ways to apply for asylum, so that
at least the opportunity.
Exactly. So they're not forced to do this. So obviously the point is that Rishi Sunak, the government, Suella Braverman, think that this will stop people, it will stop the boats, it'll stop the criminal gangs that are profiteering off this, because people will say, well, OK, the UK isn't an attractive place because we're just going to get sent away. Labour, of course, is saying that this is going to be make things even more chaotic, it's going to be unworkable, and there are so many different problems with it. And actually, if you look at what the government have done so far with their Rwanda plan, well, how's that going? Well, 0 people have gone to Rwanda, and we were talking about this, a couple of months ago, 6 months ago, maybe. So I think the workability of this is a real question mark, and I think it really has to be a multi-pronged approach. At the moment, the government, I think, are bigging up the fact that they're being tough on illegal immigration because it's going to be a vote winner, because they want to claw back from some points from Labour. But I don't think that's necessarily just the problem. I think they need to look at it in lots of different ways, and one of those is processing people a lot faster, giving people the ability to try and come here legally. That will obviously stop the small boats coming across, and it is a tragedy. Obviously, we've seen so many times where boats have sunk or people have drowned at sea, and at the moment we're in the winter, people are still crossing, but it's the dead of winter, it's the summer where people really come across, and we've seen up to 1,000 people a day coming. So it's something that needs to be sorted out. I think a lot of people think that this policy that has been introduced in the last few days is probably not the way to do it. But let's see. I think there's quite a few people who will maybe take on the government in terms of this, that it's not lawful. And a lot of people saying that we've been a compassionate country for so many years, we've let people in, and immigration has on the whole been very good for us in so many different ways, that this looks like quite a cruel policy. But at least, a lot of people will also see it the other way. They'll say, well, we've been too easy on migrants, and, people are taking our jobs, etc., etc. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. But at least Rishi Sunak and the government look like, or want to appear like, they're doing something serious to try and tackle the problem, and it is definitely a problem.
Thank you. It's a difficult debate, and the government can't dance around the law. You either break it or you adhere to it. So let's see whether or not this bill gets its passing. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Now to our next topic. This week, the world has paused to mark International Women's Day. The global holiday celebrates the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. Women like Titi Akinsami, a digital public policy expert, recognised for her work as Google's global policy team, where she is the lead on products such as Google Assistant and other emerging technologies. And this woman, Candice Horbert, a Texas-based scientific associate who was recently recognised in People magazine's Women Changing the World 2023. And Vanessa Nakate, a Ugandan climate justice activist and UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador.
Climate action helps girls stay in school, which in turn helps countries tackle the climate crisis. We must make it possible for all children to have access to an education, and we must help them be able to stay in school.
While women like these are shattering glass ceilings for the billions of young girls who will follow behind them in order to achieve genuine gender equity and gender equality, the world of work and work on the home front too has a long way to go. In commemoration of International Women's Day, UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly launched the Global Women and Girls Strategy, which will set out how the UK will work to tackle global gender inequality at every opportunity. This will include combating attempts to roll back women's rights and work with partners from around the world to do the same. Earlier in the week, Channel's Business Global was invited to speak with the British Minister of State for Development and Africa, Andrew Mitchell MP, as his government pledges to place tackling gender inequality at the heart of its international work. Andrew Mitchell, it's a pleasure. Could you let me know why the government has placed tackling gender inequality at the heart of its international work?
I think it's very difficult to even understand international development unless you see it through the eyes of girls and women, because from poverty, women suffer first and hardest, and growing up as a young girl in some parts of the world is now extraordinarily difficult. And in Britain, we understand the importance of putting girls and women right at the front of everything we do in development. And what we're doing today is for the first time announcing that the Foreign Secretary is in Africa and is announcing this in Africa today. We're putting women right at the centre of everything we do. We're saying that on all our programmes, we will try and make sure that something like 80% of them address the issues and role of women in societies who are our partners. So that's a very important aspect of it. And also you have seen around the world, I'm afraid, in recent years, the threats and pressures on women's rights and the lives of women. COVID didn't help, but since then we've seen what's happened in Iran. We've seen the appalling treatment of women in Afghanistan, where their human rights have been grotesquely abused. And even in America, we've seen what's happened in Roe Wade. So the rights of women across the world are under attack, and we need to make it very clear that in Britain we want to advance this agenda. We believe in equal rights for men and women and equal opportunity. And this is our statement to our friends and our partners in Africa and around the poor world, that this is very central to everything we do.
Hear, hear. James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, is in Sierra Leone. Can you provide more information about what is being launched, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa? I believe there's a women's sexual and reproductive health and rights programme. What are you hoping to achieve?
Well, we recognise that one of the key ways in which you can empower women is to give them the ability to make decisions for themselves over whether and when they have children. It's been an enormous campaign that Britain has had. 10 years ago, we had a very big multinational event in London to underline the importance of this for the rights of women. And through the WISH programme, which is the one you referred to, we put something like £200 million into this programme in order to advance the rights of women. And I was in Niger just a week or so ago and saw the tremendous need there for advancing the rights of women. It's a key priority of the president there. But when you consider that something like 72% of all girls are married, most of them pregnant, by the age of 18, you see that advancing the rights of women and giving them opportunity in every single sphere, education, sexual rights, preventing violence, sexual violence against women. These are very important agendas, and they're very important agendas for Britain, working with our partners. And another area where we have worked closely with the Nigerian authorities is to stop the great evil of female genital mutilation, and our programmes there and around the world are dedicated to trying to do something about that enormous injustice.
Right, I'm not sure if you've had time to go on Twitter today, but what's trending is the hashtag Embrace Equality, which is of course the theme for International Women's Day this year. How are you urging your allies across the world to do that? What should world leaders try and do, for example, in Niger?
Well, we're setting a good example. We've announced a £33 million equality fund. We are putting money into a whole series of other issues, for example, working with women's organisations at local level, honouring the key principle of localism. So in terms of equality, we are staunchly behind it, and we are putting our money where our mouth is, and we are emphasising through this newly announced programme by the Foreign Secretary today in Africa the absolute importance we attach to the rights of girls and women and helping them in a practical way, putting our taxpayers' money behind it to advance this very important mutual agenda.
This week, the world has paused to mark International Women's Day. The global holiday celebrates the social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women everywhere. Women such as this, Odunayo Eweniyi, a business executive and co-founder of the Feminist Coalition and co-founder and COO of West Africa's first savings and investment app, PiggyVest. And this lady, Waris Dieri, a Somali-born model, author and human rights activist, notable for championing against female genital mutilation practices. Professor Mamokgethi Phakeng is the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town in South Africa. She holds an impressive PhD in mathematics and has published over 80 peer-reviewed articles which have earned her global recognition. We celebrate these women and the billions of others around the world, like my next guest, Jessica Hope, the founder and CEO of the leading Africa tech PR firm, Wimbart. She joined me earlier on in the studio for an in-depth discussion about her extraordinary career. Jessica Hope, a lady who's been in my email and who's also been on social media with me, and I've had plenty of your clients on Channels Business Global, but I've never met you in person. It's an absolute pleasure to be speaking with such a phenomenal woman when women are being celebrated this month. Let's start at the beginning. I want to talk about Wimbart because it's a huge success and it's opened up the doors for so many tech professionals who are sometimes, left hung out to dry by silicon broadsheets. So tell me how that started out and how's it going?
Thank you very much for having me, Juliana. So Wimbart started 7 or 8 years ago now. Formerly, I actually worked in Nollywood. I was head of comms at Iroko. So I used to work across Nigeria, South Africa, New York. I spent a lot of time in New York, and then obviously we're based in London. And so I worked a lot in the entertainment space, African entertainment space, and then the tech space as well. And the CEO, Jason Njoku, who many people will know, he said to me one day, I think it's time for you to go out on your own.
Wow.
And I was like, oh.
A man said that to a woman?
And I thought, wow, are you firing me?
Yeah.
And he said, no. He said, but, you might reach a glass ceiling at Iroko in terms of your role here. You're very senior already. What more can you do? And basically, a lot of other people in especially the Nigerian tech space, were asking Jason if I could be seconded to them.
When was this?
This was 2014.
So tech was still...
Really early days.
Very early days. You got in early.
I mean, this was 2014, but I'd been at Iroko since 2011. So I'd already been in the space for a little while. And Jason really was the kind of poster guy for African tech on a global scene. So I left Iroko. I was 7 months pregnant.
Wow.
And I set up Wimbart from my kitchen table. I was also in the process of buying a house, and I learnt to drive as well in that same time.
You do it all.
And then Iroko was my first client. I was very, very fortunate. So not only did I have an ally and someone who knew me and knew my capabilities, but he, being very entrepreneurial, saw an opportunity for me. It hadn't really ever crossed my mind to set up my own business. So I'm really fortunate that I had a support network to help me on my way.
Yeah, and it's been a success story ever since. When I was producing the show and going through some of the script, I was thinking, goodness me, I remember for a very long period of my time, especially growing up in this country black, I used to think my Achilles heel was just being black. I never even considered being a woman being an Achilles heel until you start climbing the ladder and you realise that, he's getting better opportunities and he's on a better salary. Is it because I'm a woman? And you realise that actually, even if you are a black woman or a woman of colour or an Asian woman, you are going to face those issues. When did being a woman in business at a senior level dawn on you that, actually, I may not be as equal as him?
I think probably earlier on in my career, I was really fortunate that I have been working in a bubble for the last 12 years, I would say. And in that bubble, I would say I worked at Iroko and I worked with Jason, who had a lot of senior women on his team. Yeah. And I worked in a predominantly black or ethnic minority group as well. Yeah. And I have been in that situation now for 12 years. Yeah. So speaking to other people, and I think it's important to look outside of your bubble, I realised actually it is harder for other women as well. So, we have a summer party, we have a Christmas party. We usually have it on a Friday afternoon, and it often finishes at 6 o'clock. So if people want to go home or need to go home afterwards, they can do, and they're not missing out. And we do social things within the working days as well, so everyone can be included. And it's small things like that which makes the difference for women, I think, to go up the ladder and have an impact at work.
Absolutely. We're going to show our viewers some of the pictures of your staff because I know you've got a very young team and diversity is important. Why do you think diversity is important in the workplace? I know that's a silly question, but how has that helped shape the success of Wimbart?
So actually, I don't think it's a silly question because a lot of people still don't get it. Of course, you have to have women in the workplace. You know, women make up 50% of the population. You need women of different ages. We have women, you know, who are just starting out in their careers, as well as women who've got 20 years under their belt so far as well. You have to have diversity in terms of different ways of thinking, different approaches, different skill sets as well. At Wimbart, until very recently, our whole senior management team was women.
Wow.
Which is quite... but then now we have to look at our own diversity and say, actually, of course we need balance. We need to have men on the team as well. So we now have a 60-40 split, but still the top 3 ranks at Wimbart are held by women.
Wow. That's amazing. I remember I was speaking to my daughter. I have a teenager. My goodness, yes, I do. And she was talking about beauty standards and society and how certain women are placed in certain places. And I realised that, goodness, I need to instill so much, you know, confidence in her. What would you say to young women who, you know, don't have the Kim Kardashian figure, don't have enough money to go to Turkey, you know, to get their body done, but are feeling the pressures of that with what we're getting in social media? What advice would you give to them?
It's really hard because you and I grew up in an age where social media wasn't really prevalent. You and I probably had, you know, a phone when we were about 15 or 16, and it certainly...
It wasn't a smartphone.
It wasn't. It was texting.
Yeah, it was instant snake.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You didn't run out of credit.
Yes.
So it's difficult because younger women are being blasted all day, every day, and they're being sold to. They're being sold products. They're being sold a dream. They're being sold a lifestyle. So it's very hard to block these things out. My advice would be to focus on your work, whatever area it is, whether or not you want to be a lawyer, whether or not you do want to be a beautician, whatever you do, you have to be excellent at it and work really hard. I don't think it is as easy as saying they should just block it out, because that is really tough. They're just being bombarded.
They are. We're running out of time. I can't let you go without speaking about some of the women that inspire you. Give us some notes so we can Google them.
Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a massive Beyonce fan. Musically...
High five. High five.
Bayhive.
Yeah.
I love her, I think, but her commitment to excellence as well. Not just the kind of persona as well, but how she approaches things.
The dedication.
Dedication, talent, energy. So Beyonce would be on my list of inspirational women. I think in terms of resilience and hard work and excellence, Serena Williams as well has got to be there. I think one of the most interesting clips I've ever seen is Andy Murray turning around to a journalist a few years ago, and he referred to the journalist referred to Serena Williams as the most successful female tennis player, and Andy Murray corrected the journalist and said the most successful tennis player.
Wow. Coming from him, that's a huge compliment.
Which was amazing. Yeah. And certainly my grandmother, when I grew up on Wimbart Road, or my dad grew up on Wimbart Road, as did my grandmother. My grandmother was white, and she got together with my granddad from Guyana in the early 50s, I think.
Brave.
Very brave. And her family didn't speak to her ever again, because she was an unmarried white woman who had children with a black man.
From Africa?
Guyana, sorry,
yes.
in South America. But
yes.
Yeah, it was shameful at that time. 50s Britain was not a cool place. And she built an amazing family, had 2 sons. My dad went on to be a very successful policeman.
Yeah, we've not spoken about your father, but it's for women today.
Yeah, it's women today. But she was the power, she was the force behind him and my uncle, who managed to build careers in the police as well.
That's so amazing. You're such an inspiring lady. I love speaking to women. And even though, yes, we do fight, we do fall out, I have found that some of the best doors that have been opened for me have been opened and kicked through by women. So we do support each other.
And women do it effortlessly as well. And they're not making mental notes. And I think we're just used to having to support. I wouldn't just say help, it's not just help all the time, but support, give advice, mentor.
Groom.
Exactly, all of those things is really, really important.
Yeah, it is. It's so lovely to speak with you. Jessica Hope, CEO and founder of Wimbart. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Julianne.
Thank you. Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.